welcome back to another episode of the Envisiontech podcast. I'm your host, Paul Gagan, and this week will be part 2 of our conversation with Michael. We kind of already talked about the work like part-time and some of the challenges kind of to do with that. Do you feel like you need to do anything in particular to manage your time better since you're here only 2 days a week? Or do you feel like that doesn't really kind of affect you as much?
It can go positive and negative, depending on what way you do it. Because I work 2 jobs, so I kind of try to I find that depending on the day that it is, that if I really sit there and kind of go, okay, I really have to knuckle down and rush through everything, to make sure that everything is if not done, fully handed over before I finish. But that can play into my nerves, that can make me feel more pressured than I need to be, which can make me make more mistakes, or if I hit a brick wall, would make me a lot more stressed and make me freaked out. But there are some times where you just need to be like that, for the sake of getting things done. And then there are times where you kind of, when you do hit those brick walls or something like that, you can kind of go, no, things are fine. Take a step back. I guess it's about finding that delicate balance to maximize as much as you can with your output without being detrimental to yourself or the work that you're doing.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. I feel like honestly we've done a pretty good job at managing that. Even in terms of communicating about projects and things like that. We usually just communicate through Discord. We have like a Discord server for the company. And if I'm working on something during the week and I need to tell Michael something about it, I'll just put a message in the Discord and he'll just see it on Thursday. Especially because there is only 2 of us, there's not going to be loads of other messages in there between then and now. So it actually kind of works out pretty well, generally speaking. And same thing, if I want to give him feedback, we generally have a pull request open where I can go and comment on whatever he's done. So, if I have any feedback or if I want to merge it, when he comes back then on Thursdays, he can kind of see that. So I feel like generally speaking, that goes pretty well. And I feel like you've also done pretty good at when you are having trouble or whatever, you'll just put it in the Discord and I'll just reply to your message or whatever. And same goes when I'm done with a feature, generally speaking, I'll open pull request too and be like, hey Michael, look at this and tell me if I've done a terrible job or not. And I feel like it generally works out pretty well. I feel like a lot of other people and companies actually do worse at kind of part-time arrangements, to be honest, as far as I've heard. Um, and I feel like it works out pretty well, obviously, because I guess we could technically afford to pay you full time, but not really. So I feel like even being able to kind of have you there part time is actually really helpful. It's almost half the week, so it's essentially being able to get 50% more stuff done in a week. It may be a little bit more actually, because I can't just focus only on development. So we probably get more than 50% done, 50% extra done in a week in terms of development. So I feel like it honestly works out pretty well. And obviously for you, as you said earlier, you kind of get your foot in the door in the tech industry. No matter how things go, here, you've been here now for, what is it, almost 6 months?
I think it's nearly 6 months to the day. I think it was around the 18th-ish of August.
Yeah, I think you're right, actually. So yeah, almost 6 months now. So even if tomorrow I'm like, yeah, Michael, sorry, actually you're fired, get out of here. At least then you have the kind of 6 months experience to go, oh yeah, actually I've worked, in the tech industry before. I'm not just a random graduate anymore. I have references, I have whatever, because I feel like that's also really beneficial, and part of the reason why it's hard for graduates to get jobs at the minute, because it's do I want to hire this random graduate and pay them for 5 months to do my graduate program, or do I just want to hire a developer who already has experience? So I feel like even that aspect obviously is good, and I feel like it works out pretty well for both of us, thankfully.
Yeah, and I think if there's a good time to work for a startup, well, there's kind of 2 ways about it. For me, I'm still quite young. I'm still again, I'm not long out of college. If I was in a career for 15 years and, I had my whole life, whatever my living situation was, and I said, oh, I'm actually going to give up my entire career to go and work for a startup, that'd be a insanely absurd risk, like in so many ways, especially if there's people that could be dependent on me in some capacity to be able to have some sort of like cushion with a job. Um, and as well, while the job market isn't necessarily at its best, um, it's good to be working for a company that, I mean, like with any luck, like I wouldn't have to, worry about anything else because it's a company that could like, what if this company does grow and it does go really big and everything does go really well, you know, then like I actually got to be a part of that, and that's really really accomplishing at a young age. That's obviously way down the line and kind of talking, best case scenario. But I think even the worst case scenario um is still like, oh, okay, things didn't work out, but like that's fine. I learned, I got to learn a lot. Um and there's definitely advantages to things going well and things, well, not advantages to things not going well. There's something to come out of it. There's a silver lining to it all.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. I mean, even for me, to be honest, like, I've actually learned loads, not even just about development, but I have learned loads, honestly, more than doing a graduate program would have taught me, because especially a lot of them make you just start from like programming 101 again, because they have to be very general, generally speaking. But even in terms of like managing people and managing my time, because you don't really have to worry about that when you're an employee of like a big company. They just kind of say, here's your thing, get it done by the end of the day. And that's basically what happens every day. Um, and if you're not on track, somebody will come along and say, okay, what's going on? Blah, 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 whatever. But like if I just don't do anything for a week, you're not gonna message me and be like, well, why aren't you working? You know, so it's actually been kind of really interesting to kind of learn how to actually, manage my own time and also yours, be like, oh yeah, Michael, how are things going? Even like we've started trying to, you know, uh, tell each other when we're going on lunch and stuff as well, because we don't necessarily have a set lunch time or anything like that. So, even just getting better at like communicating things to people, I feel like it's been really beneficial. Even I said, because I've had to like make the stories and make them so that you will understand what we need. I can't just say, put thing on page, because I'll know what I'm on about, but you probably won't. Um, and even obviously just reading code, I feel like I've learned a lot even from reading like your code, and like looking at how you might do something as opposed to how I would have done it. And sometimes I'm like, wow, actually that's a way better idea than what I had. So I think even just that, like you don't, not that you don't do that in like bigger companies, but I feel like you don't really get as much of a chance to do that. So I feel like it's actually really beneficial.
It depended on the field for sure, because I think what some people might get into is things like support, and it's like, um, oh, you have this ticket or this issue, and it's like, okay, solve the issue, and there is generally, only so many limited ways you can do that. Um, whereas we get to be like, all right, let's make a website, and like that's so open ended. It's like, all right. And then we can like talk about, well, what does the website need? Okay, well, how do we do that? Oh, they actually might want this. Oh, we haven't done this before. Okay, how are we going to do that? It's more open in a way, and it's really cool.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. Like even in terms of making login sort of portals for people. None of our clients that we've made websites for, I think, have wanted that yet. But even for other projects that we're doing in particular, like I've had to learn how to do that. And I'm like, how do you do like OAuth stuff where you can just log in with Google or log in with GitHub? And it's actually a whole big thing, it turns out, and it's actually kind of difficult and complicated. But then once you kind of get it, it's actually really easy. Like even making a cart, like we made a cart once, and now it's like, okay, we know how to make a cart, for an e-commerce website. Um, so I feel like it is, like it is definitely kind of weird when it's just like yeah, go make a cart. And it's like, all right, I guess we'll figure out how to make a cart. Or go make a date picker, and we just are like, okay, we'll make a date picker, whatever. And also sometimes you can use pre-existing things, but sometimes you can't. Or like sometimes if for date pickers, there are a lot of like pre-built ones, but sometimes your client might have specific requirements where it's like, I need to be able to do this or I need to be able to do that. And it's like, okay, well, actually now we're gonna have to make our own and we have to figure that out. So yeah, I do think it is like you don't just get like a big document with like everything you need to do, all the steps, etc. Like I said, it can be very open-ended, which I think is a good and a bad thing. I think it's good if that's what you like, but if you need like a really strict structure, obviously it's not so good.
Yeah. And I think one thing that's interesting as well is that along the way you could realize, oh, now we have to make this thing for this feature, and then we kind of you can sit there and you can go, oh, we didn't make that in mind at all. We're gonna have to change everything. But then you never make that mistake again.
Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. Like even with code maintainability, like we looked at a file there the other day and it had over 1,000 lines of code, and I was like, okay, 1,300 lines or whatever it was is way too many. We need to not do that again. And we need to start kind of making more components. And that's something that we've been doing. Like we've been making components for things. But I think as time goes on, we're like more and more trying to make things more modular so that if we do need to use, a particular thing again, we can just use it again. It's already there, it's a component. Or if we want to move it over to another project, it's less kind of project specific as well, generally. So we can just basically reuse it as is. And obviously you might make it look a bit different or whatever, but the functionality of it anyway is kind of already pre-existing. So yeah, but again, I feel like that's kind of part of the learning journey that we've had um, as kind of a company. Because if it was just me working on stuff or whatever, like whatever, I'd probably just get over the fact that the file is 1,300 lines long. But when I'm trying to read code that you were putting in that file that I didn't write, it's like, what am I even looking at here? I don't even know whose stuff is whose anymore. Um, so yeah, I think that's really important. Obviously, I mean, I knew you before you started here as well. Like we knew each other in college. I don't have we worked on any projects together? I don't actually think we had, did we actually in college?
No, no, not at all. We didn't like at least in the years like a second year there was definitely no group projects because that wouldn't have been possible. Um, Third year there was, but I did mine on my own. I think you did yours on your own. It was actually web dev as well. And then fourth year, I don't think there was any real group projects, especially because we took different choices for some of our modules as well. So I just don't think I ever really ended up working with anyone in the end on a lot of stuff. And I think there was maybe in some of my like choices that I worked together.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think in first year we had maybe one or two group projects, but they didn't really, I don't want to say they didn't count because they did, but like it was pretty basic stuff since it was first year. And yeah, it's kind of weird to me that we didn't do more group stuff given that being a developer, like you don't just not work with anybody, especially now. Like generally speaking, you're on a team, unless you're like well, even if you're a freelancer or a contractor, like you go in and work with other people, like generally. Um, so yeah, it was very weird to me, and I was always saying like I don't know why we didn't do more group projects to be honest. Especially in the later years. Honestly, in first year, I'd understand if we didn't have any, and then we started doing them in second and third year. Um, so I feel like group projects are actually harder than individual projects usually because you don't like it's not like I can't just sit down and say, oh, I'm gonna write all this code. I'm responsible for it. It's gonna be done whatever way I like it to be done. Whatever. You have to like obviously work together. Everybody's code has to work together. Um, Honestly, I don't know why they don't do more of that. But obviously we knew each other from that. So I feel like we already kind of at least knew a little bit of how to work together. Like, well, not even work together, but like even how to communicate with each other. Obviously, we had kind of a bit more built up trust. Like, I don't know how I would feel about hiring a stranger and giving
Mhm.
them access to all of our stuff,
Mhm.
like all our different repos. And not that I think they do anything bad, but it's just, I've never had to hire a complete stranger before. So um, it's just kind of interesting how different it is, even just having known you a little bit, how like much more likely I was to want to hire you over, somebody else. Honestly, I would have much rather have you than some random senior developer that I've never met before. Even obviously if they had like a lot more industry experience, they probably would they have more than me, if they were a senior developer. Um, but like I don't know, I think especially in like a smaller company, it's like that kind of trust is really important. Especially because it's not like you will work on one repo, Michael. You will never touch anything else. Like I need you to work on just about everything. There aren't many projects that you haven't worked on, if any at all, actually. I think there's like one, but it's like it's a desktop app, and it's not even really it's kind of more so my side project at the minute than anything
Yeah,
else. Um like I'll probably get you to have a look at it at some point, but like that's it, otherwise you've looked at everything, you have access to like our databases and our servers that we use and whatever else. So yeah, I do think actually it was really kind of helpful to like have somebody that I already knew. Because yeah, otherwise I don't know how I would have felt about hiring somebody, to be honest with you.
I think that's only natural because like it's your company and like it's you've been working on this for like is it 2 years now or a year and a half of like
Um, in reality, just over a year.
yeah, and like you've been working on it what 6 days a week. You did a lot of long hours. Like it's your company, but it's also like it's so much hour like time and effort that you put into it. Like of course you'd naturally be protective over it. So I think that's just a completely normal way to feel about it. That that trust. It's not that you wouldn't trust anyone. It's more that like that want to protect something that you've you know put so much effort into.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. No, I think so for sure. Go on, you were gonna say?
oh, I was just gonna say, like, even when I was thinking about college there, like even though there were some projects that weren't group projects, we would ask each other how we're getting on. Oh, how you getting on with this? Oh, okay. Um, and we would want to know what we did. And I think we people just naturally are inclined to socialize anyway. So if I was staying back after college or I was in on my time off, whatever, doing something, it was only natural that like you would talk about your projects and stuff like that. So you would have like we're not directly working on this like the project the same way, but there was definitely times where we would bounce back and forth about what we were working on, kind of thinking like, oh, are you going to go this way or that way? Especially if a project that like our assignment had a few options. Like I think one of our web dev ones had it was the one in third year. I think we had like the options to use like React and Node.js and all different bits, and it would be like, oh, and how? Oh, did you try using Node? Yeah, I did. Oh, how did you get it working? Like there were some times where we would just collaborate in an indirect way.
Yeah, that is very true. Actually, that would happen. Like you would, as I said, if a lot of the projects that have like option one, option two, option three, and sometimes it would even be worth like a different amount of marks. So like the first option be the easiest, second one middle, third one hardest, and you kind of see people like, oh, who's doing what, so yeah, no, that actually did kind of happen. Which, yeah, as you said, it's weird because we kind of not necessarily collaborated in our own way, but like there was still kind of that like group kind of mentality, even though it was like individual projects. So yeah, that was actually pretty interesting. And I know actually one just because you mentioned there that like obviously like I've been putting a lot of time into the company and stuff, and that's actually sometimes something I struggle with is actually separating like me from the company, even though it is separate. It's like if we do something, like if there's something that we do or something that we haven't done, like I personally like feel very responsible for it. So yeah, I think that's also probably partially why it was obviously way easier with like hiring somebody that I already knew. Just because yeah, I'm not very good at the separation part yet, which I probably should be. And it can be kind of hard sometimes because even having like the difference between professional and working relationships, even with like some of our clients, like I know some of them personally, and it's like, okay, if you're gonna send me a WhatsApp, I don't know if it's business related or if it's a personal thing or if you're calling me, like I don't know what it's for. Um, So even trying to separate that out is kind of hard sometimes. What I've tried to do even is have like a group chat, for example, on WhatsApp or whatever, specifically for the project, or only message them on WhatsApp about like personal things or whatever it might be. It can be kind of hard though because not everybody does that. So then even if I'm doing it, they'll call me or message me, and I'm like, okay, yeah, that's a business thing. Especially obviously because sometimes I'll be on my phone on the weekend or whatever, and it's like trying not to work every day of the week. But yeah, it is kind of hard. Even I feel like we've done a pretty good job of not doing that. Like generally, I try not to message you like on WhatsApp or whatever about business things. I try and keep that in our Discord, or like I'll email your work email address. So I feel like we've actually done a pretty good job at that, thankfully, even though we do
Yeah.
personally know each other as well.
But like even then, there can be times where like we would be messaging on WhatsApp and work things would come up because like and nothing to do with like anything that I've worked on or you work on, but like sometimes there are things that are just cool to know. Like if we got a new client, I'm sure you'd tell me by WhatsApp because like that's something that even if I wasn't working for you, I'd like to know about that. I think that'd be cool. I think that'd be class.
That is true because even before you started working here, I would message you and be like, "Oh yeah, we actually just made this thing. Let me know what you think." See, that is true. Like, but I feel like that's not so much work personal life balance because, as you
Mm.
said, we kind of do that anyway. See, I feel like it is kind of weird trying to not do too much of that, especially when you do work together. Obviously. Um, I mean, obviously, speaking of like employees and things, obviously, like long term. I mean, right now we kind of make things for people, and I don't know if that's the direction that we're going to keep going in or not. I kind of want to make some of our own things, and we're already kind of doing that as well a little bit. And we're probably going to do more of that. But like, yeah, in terms of like what we're going to do in the future, it's a little bit hard to say. Kind of whatever works. And the plan is eventually to just kind of focus on our own things. But look, hey, maybe tomorrow we'll get 10 clients, and then it turns out we actually kind of just now need to keep doing that because that's what's working or whatever. So I feel like even that can be sometimes hard for startups to say exactly what you're going to be doing. Like I can't even tell you what we're going to be doing next week. Forget next year. Um, like things could change completely tomorrow. I suppose for me personally, the reason why I kind of started Envisionly and what I kind of want to hope to keep doing is trying to make things more accessible, and that's something we've really been focusing on a lot recently. As we've been setting up like better accessibility testing and going through and fixing like color contrast issues and setting up like high contrast themes and stuff like that. Um, so I mean, for me personally, that's kind of the only real goal. Is to keep trying to make that positive change. Even I've met with like some people from GitHub and other like companies at this point who are like, oh yeah, we saw your comment about this accessibility issue. Do you want to give us some feedback on it? Honestly, like even if tomorrow it's like, okay, actually, yeah, we can't keep doing envisioning stuff anymore, whatever. I feel like what I kind of set out to do, I've already at least done a good bit of, which I'm really thankful for personally, is just kind of getting more people to know about accessibility. Like even you, if you tomorrow were like, oh, actually, I got a better job offer, I'm gonna have to take it. Whatever. I'm gonna be a software engineer at whatever company. Like you are also now know way more about accessibility than you probably did before you started here because we didn't learn about it in college at all, and even our lecturers didn't really know anything about it. So even just like that, alone, I'm like, okay, well, at least we had some kind of good impact. That hopefully it's not going to change the world or nothing, but like as I'm always saying, anybody that I can tell about adding alt text to an image, it's like, well, there you go. That's one more person that'll hopefully do it.
Yeah, I think that's the thing is that it does not like I think that like people just have to be more conscious of it, and that is where like the importance of things like speeches and talks and awareness is like really really good because it puts people onto it subconsciously. But at the same time, it also does take someone to sit there and kind of go, all right, we're actually going to implement accessibility though, because talking about it is really good because yeah, like I'm definitely a lot more conscious of it where like I'd almost feel guilty as if I was in another company and I was making an image and I didn't even like use like a label or an alt text on everything now because I like I'm it's alienating. And even I mean, I knew some bits about accessibility during college because I knew what wasn't working for you. That was always very evident because there were certain like learning tools and certain programs that we needed, um, that you just couldn't use, and there was no other solutions. But I suppose now I've actually got to learn of like, oh, how do you nip those problems in the bud before that comes to it? Because you wouldn't want to make a whole website, or a whole project or program and have none of it be usable for a demographic. You have to go back to the drawing board and like nearly start fresh. It's really good now knowing like, okay, at least specifically from the web dev perspective, everything I'm designing should have this, 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 and this, and that's really useful. And if more people are aware of that and can implement that in their fields, that would make life a lot easier. And it only takes 2 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, and I feel like it also, I hopefully shown you how actually easy it is. Like, is it actually that hard to add an ARIA label to a button that has an icon?
It genuinely is. Like it could, like, if I like, whether it's a button or an image or anything like that, it's like all like, I mean, I could test it as I go without even needing to run it by you, as long as it could be like, all it takes is like to even test it. Can you tab to it, and then if you're right, inspect the element. Can you see what the label is? Yeah. Okay. Cool. Move on.
Yeah, like it literally takes all of a few seconds, like to type ARIA label equals, my button or whatever it is. And then as you said, just see if you can tab to it and is the label there? Yeah, well, it's grand. Like that's what as when I tell people, that's what's really annoying for me as somebody who knows how to, how to be a developer or
Mhm.
whatever you want to word it, is when I come across a problem, it's like you really couldn't have been bothered to put an ARIA label on any of these buttons. Like really, none of them. And it can be honestly really frustrating. Because I know how easy it is to solve most of the problems. I feel like in some ways I'm like, oh, I wish I didn't know how to fix this, because then it wouldn't be so annoying. But like that's what I'm always telling people. Even I'll email a company and I'll be like, yeah, you guys actually have loads of unlabeled buttons, and they're like, well, actually, I'll just name the company. It's Babbel, the language learning app, right? And I use Babbel personally because I feel like it's one of the better solutions for learning languages. But whatever, it's better for me than Duolingo. But I emailed them not too long ago, and I was like, you guys could really improve your app, like the accessibility or whatever. And actually, you can't actually use the app; it actually isn't accessible at all. So they were like, oh, use the website, and I was like, okay, yeah. This also still has quite a few problems, and they were like, well, actually, we're kind of busy. We're, implementing some new AI things. And I was like, okay, that was really annoying. And then they came out with a redesign there, like maybe a week ago. And I was like, so you were actually redesigning the pages anyway, and knew that they weren't going to be accessible. Told me that you were focusing on AI and weren't going to be doing anything like that, and then didn't fix any of the problems. Um, See, I don't know. It's just it's weird for me, as a developer, and somebody who has to use screen. Um, but yeah, obviously, I know you said the like transition was a bit weird, especially because you didn't necessarily go right into the job. You kind of just like you went from college to then not working in the tech industry to then obviously starting. And obviously that we're fully remote too. Like we don't have an office or anything like that. So how do you feel like the transition kind of went for you? Like, was there any particularly big adjustments or anything like that? Was it kind of what you expected? Like, do you think that college actually prepared you for working in this kind of environment, or what?
Yeah, for sure. Like, I mean, most of my assignments were from my home, and anyway, it was definitely like, I I mean, I think college is very useful because if you're like, it might not teach you absolutely everything that you're going to get into, because at the end of the day you could be using outdated technology, or you could actually go, oh, I really like doing this, but I actually want to go into this. You might have be someone who's really passionate about, well, just off the top of my head, like physical, electronic, like maybe even like electronic engineering, or something physical, whereas our course was very software based. And you might still go, and after doing all the software and going and doing something in hardware, and even though you like directly you didn't learn everything, and maybe not even anything to do with hardware. It puts you in the headspace that you need to be for programming or for any sort of tech. So like even if I never used Svelte, I never used Bone or anything like that, but it's like, oh, that's just like this thing I kind of used before. And then when you come into problems, you know what way you have to think about them to solve them. So I do think college definitely did help, because if I never went and I was just thrown in the deep end trying to do this, like sure I could pick it up, but it would be a much slower learning curve for sure.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. I feel like you said it's more so about learning like those problem solving skills and things like that. That's more important. Like you can learn a new programming language tomorrow, but you can't learn how to problem solve tomorrow. You know, that takes a lot longer. And I said even just having the right mindset for things is really important. Do you think you have any particular advice for people who are maybe like recent graduates or going to be graduating soon or kind of transitioning into the tech industry, or not really?
I don't know how much my insight means anything, but like realistically, because I mean I don't know exactly what the landscape is there for this year's graduates. For all I know, this year's graduates could be doing very well, and it'd be great if they're doing very well. And they didn't have to wait like a year or a year and a half to get anywhere, and hopefully that isn't the case. But I guess if anyone's graduating and while they're, if they have time ahead of them, they might be lucky that they could even be spoiled for choice on where to go or what to do when they finish. Just to do whichever one, I guess, like not to be afraid to maybe take a risk with something. Like I mean, you did that, you know. You could have taken the cushion of a very uh like a consistent job where like you wouldn't have to worry about a lot of the things you have to worry about now managing a company. You could have been just an employee, kept your head down, and done really well. But you decided to sit there and you take a chance, and like that's, as you said, you feel quite accomplished from it. I feel like I've at the very least that I got to accomplish something by working, even if it is only part time, um, on a project like if you consider like envisioning a project because it has a goal. Um, yeah, just to like I don't know, just don't be afraid to take chances on things, and but also like I could blame someone if they wanted to have a cushion.
Yeah, I mean that was kind of my plan was to maybe go and work in the industry for a while and then kind of maybe start my own company eventually. But honestly, that wasn't really working out for me very well. So just kind of decided to do this anyway. But yeah, I feel like a lot of people, that's what they do is they'll go work for maybe 10 years. But then the thing is, a lot of those people actually then never do what they set out to do. They're just like, oh, I'm going to stay here or whatever. Because at that point, it's the safe option. Because maybe you have a mortgage, you have a family, whatever it is. And it's like, I can't really take the risk anymore or whatever it might be. So yeah. Um, I think actually we honestly had a good few more things to talk about, but we have already gotten a lot of kind of stuff talked about here. So I think actually we might, at some point anyway, have you back on because I think there
Yeah,
are definitely still some good things we could talk about. But I'm also not going to make a 2 hour episode or a 4 part episode and make
yeah,
you sit here for another hour and talk to me. Um, yeah, that's perfect. So yeah, just want to say thank you so much for coming on, Michael, and really appreciate the insight. And it's been absolutely amazing to even just have you here at Envisionly. So just wanted to really say thanks for coming on. Thanks for joining Envisionly in the first place. Um, yeah, just thanks so much.
yeah. Of course, no worries at all.
Yet again, a big thank you to Michael. That was quite a long conversation, so I really do appreciate his time there and had a fantastic conversation there. So hopefully you learned something from that. Thank you so much for listening to both parts. And if you haven't heard part one yet, obviously you should go back and listen to that. Also, just as fantastic. as always, this has been the Envisiontech podcast, and I've been your host, Paul Gagan. See you all next week.